So as many of you probably already know who've read the book Healing Developmental Trauma, in NARM we have 5 what we call adaptive survival styles. And each one of these survival styles is named for the missing or the compromised resource. And so today I'm going to spend just a little time, obviously these are very big and complex issues, but I want to just do an introduction to working with the connection survival style. And the connection survival style is named for just exactly what I was saying, the missing or compromised resource. And when I talk about connection, I mean both difficulty in having connection with themselves, with being in touch with their bodies and their emotions, and difficulty in being in connection and social engagement with other people. So, and there are often, usually both are present. So, it's maybe important to understand that this is the very first developmental survival style, and the survival styles are developmentally based. And so as you can see on the developmental period, this includes pre- and perinatal trauma, birth trauma, and early attachment trauma. So it's trauma that really happens before the child has fully embodied. And it's one of the reasons why we see, I know many of you out there are somatically oriented therapists and have come across many of our clients that when you ask them what they feel in their body, they can't tell you. And there are reasons for that.
And emotionally as well.
And emotionally too, absolutely. They don't know what they feel emotionally, they don't know what they feel somatically, and both of those are significant symptoms, and we don't want to just address the symptoms. We don't ever want to try and get people into their emotions. We don't want to try and get people into their body who have difficulty going to both emotions and their body, because they're staying in a more dissociated place, in a more disconnected place for a reason. And we need to work with helping it be safe for the person to organically, spontaneously begin moving back into connection with their emotions, with their bodies, and then with other human beings as well.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I remember you saying from one of the trainings I've been at with you is that after you wrote your book, Healing Developmental Trauma, you spent quite a fair amount of the book really outlining this connection survival style. And a lot of the feedback or emails you were getting were from folks that really identified with the connection survival style, that you had really named for them their experience that other therapists or other books they've read haven't been able to fully capture. And And I wondered if there was anything that you remembered from some of those emails about what it was that they were feeling like you were really identifying.
Well, I've gotten lots of emails, but I'd say the majority, probably 70–80%, are from people who identified with this connection survival style. And really the feedback was pretty consistent, of course, expressed in different ways, but they said, finally somebody understands my life, or understands what I've been going through, or understands the difficulties that I've experienced, or understands the symptoms that I have. And so that's obviously been very rewarding, that people just feeling like this model and the understanding communicated in the book helps them to understand themselves, because often people who are highly symptomatic, as many individuals with the connection survival style are, feel so they start off feeling that there's something wrong with them, and then they actually get physical and psychological symptoms, and that increases their sense of shame, and that there's something wrong with them, and that they're defective. And to have, as we try and do in the book, to normalize this and to help them understand, that they're not, this is not just in their head, that this is a whole systemic response to early trauma, has really made an impact on people.
Yeah, and because this is pre-verbal, I mean, it's pre-perinatal attachment period, people don't have, like, when they were 6 years old and they got screamed at or they got hit, I mean, they don't have those experiences, so it's nothing to really hook it to, and they just are dealing with the symptomology, which is quite overwhelming for a lot of them. And so I can imagine that there's just describing some of the challenges, like we've laid out here, you know, feeling disconnected from your physical or emotional self, or difficulty relating to social environment, social phobia, things like this. I can imagine that can be really, you know, validating for people that are living through this.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that you and I have talked about is that people in this connection survival style, they're quite limited in their range of being able to, you know, tolerate a lot of social interaction, a lot of emotional, you know, experience. And, you know, one of the strategies, or one of the, you know, approaches in NARM with the connection survival style is to really slowly help them tolerate more of this capacity to be in the world, to be in their body, to tolerate emotional experience, and even in therapeutically, to be engaged therapeutically.
Yeah, and that is what happens, and we do it in a non-goal oriented way. We're not, you know, and I keep coming back to that because I think it's so important, because I see so many therapists out there seeing that clients disconnected from their bodies, and they think it's their job to get them back in their bodies. And I tell people again and again and again, that's not your job. The job is to explore what's getting in the way of them being in their bodies. What are, you know, what is the fear about feeling? What is the fear about coming out of the numbness that they experience? You know, what as, you know, clinicians we understand as dissociative processes. And, you know, I really try and take the pathology, in general in NARM, I've tried to take the pathology out of the dynamic. We're not there to pathologize people. So, you know, of course we can talk about it, you know, and that one of the primary survival strategies that people with very early and complex trauma use is dissociation. But I try to communicate to the clinicians who train with me is that dissociation is a capacity that we as human beings have, which helps us and has helped us bear the unbearable. So that in the beginning, you know, when we can't run and we can't fight, we can't deal, you know, the environment for whatever variety of reasons is threatening or neglectful or abandoning or profoundly unsupportive, is that we can't get away from that. So we get away, we protect ourselves by dissociating, by shutting down, by freezing, by going numb. And we don't want to take that away from people until they have better options. And that's what we hope to be able to provide for people.
So I know we can't go into an in-depth kind of consultation around a particular client, but I wondered if we kind of just talked a little bit about a client that's in their 20s and, you know, has graduated college and moved away from their family and has, you know, is kind of in their life for the first time as an adult. And they start to really experience a lot of social anxiety at work, in their relationships, and they find themselves really kind of hunkering down at home and binging on Netflix and feeling anxious about really showing up in their life. And yet they have a deep yearning to be connected, to be in a relationship, to feel more comfortable at work and in social in situations. How might we start from an NARM perspective to support this client?
Well, what we don't start with behavioral strategies to get them more engaged, because, again, from my perspective, that ignores what's going on underneath the avoidant behaviors. So what we would do is, as those of you who've watched the other video, first the client is there because they're wanting something. We help them clarify that they really do want more social engagement. They want more connection with other human beings, and that they're afraid of it. And then we say, you know, as NARM therapists, well, we'll be glad to explore whatever the dynamics are that are getting in the way of you having the kind of connection with other people that you'd like. Okay. And then we begin the self-inquiry part of looking into, you know, what is it like for them? We tend not to work in abstract global terms in NARM. We would more likely focus on a specific experience. Let's say have them bring up a specific recent social situation, and then we explore with them what goes on inside them on all levels of experience, cognitive, emotional, somatic, when they're in a social situation. They start to feel that inner conflict more clearly.
Yes.
And then one of the, to boil it down, I mean, obviously, clinically, it might take much more time to get to this question, but at the appropriate time, we want to look at what is it that's dangerous or that feels dangerous for you about being too connected.
Yeah.
Because they may be identifying with the part of them that wants to be connected without realizing that there's a big part of them that is really, really afraid of connection. It depends on the level of awareness of the client. Some clients will know that they're afraid, others will not know. They think, I want it, but it just doesn't seem to be happening. And so we start by exploring, what are the various fears that you have? What's, what are the catastrophic fantasies? What are the worst things that can happen? We start investigating in that way with them. And out of that, we start to see, that really they're viewing social engagement through the eyes of a very small child often.
So, and that would kind of correlate here with this shame-based identifications, which you outline really well in the book, but it is at the roots of this connection survival style that they are, even though this make-believe client is in his or her 20s, they are experiencing their life as if they're a terrified infant, basically.
Exactly. And that's much more common than people realize.
Yeah.
That when there has been, as the viewers can see, this kind of early trauma is like people, we know that, that there's kind of developmental arrest, but people end up being stuck at this terrified infant stage. And of course, that's not all who they are, and so we don't regress, we don't abreact, we don't work with catharsis, but there's a way that we have of helping them to work with that terrified infant consciousness that they've been carrying with them in a way that to really help that part of them grow up and to see the world more through adult eyes.
Yeah. Going back to what I was saying about the emails that people have responded to from the book, I wonder if a big part of what they're feeling named by is that intrapsychic conflict of the deep yearning to connect and to be alive, and yet the great terror of it.
Yeah. Well, the original title of the Healing Developmental Trauma book was Connection, Our Deepest Desire and Greatest Fear. I'm still emotionally attached to that, but the publishing company said it wasn't Googleable, so we couldn't use that title, and they were right about that. But it really, and that's true not just with this connection survival style, but all the other survival styles, is that we long for all of the things that human beings long for, but when we've learned that it's unsafe for a variety of developmental reasons relating most of the time to some kind of developmental trauma, to foreclose part of our experience, then what we long for is also very terrifying.
Yeah.
And it's important to be able to make room and understand how that dynamic works. Otherwise, if people just try to solve the problem or the symptoms, then they can end up being really frustrated. I'll give you a really good example. From a NARM perspective, or what we see in so commonly, is that these very difficult symptoms, such as OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is that usually we're dealing with the connection survival style. And that what we've seen in NARM again and again and again is that these, the various kinds of obsessive thinking and compulsive behaviors that people use are an attempt to try and manage an unmanageable internal experience. And if we just focus on the compulsions or the obsessiveness, then we really miss the boat. We really miss the client.
That's a great example. Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I know there's a lot more to unpacking the connection survival style, but we just wanted to give viewers a little taste of it, and we'll have more videos coming on some of the other survival styles. So thanks, Larry.
Yes, sir. Yeah, thanks, Brad.